it is more about politics and less about the sentiment. It is also more, rather strategic in the sense that the governments want to sort of create a new status quo, kind of a new situation in order to pressure Israel in some form of, new round of negotiation. And as I said, Gaza matters, but it is probably more of an amplifier rather than the only motive. I think in the end there is electoral politics. There is also, I think certain countries are more motivated ideologically than politically rather than others. For example, you could, for example, imagine that Ireland, which has its own history with civil war, etc. There is a certain ideological element, maybe in Spain as well. But other countries, I don't know, maybe France, Macron, uh, who is on his way out very soon. He doesn't have much to lose anymore, you can say. So it has nothing to lose if he pushes that issue of recognition. So different motives for different countries. I wish I could say that there is a strong urge of world leaders to respond to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But we're talking about politics here, so this is. I think it matters only insofar as it matters to the people, to the electorate, and as it matters to the extent that there is growing pressure from the street. I think largely decision makers, political leaders are driven by a political calculation rather than a humanitarian calculation. The humanitarian element enters into the fray as one of the elements, but these political leaders, they face a range of different pressure points. So they respond to a combination of these. So just purely reducing it to humanitarian grounds, I think would be simplistic. Is a political act, of course, and it has certain legal implications. For example, now in the case of Palestine, if Palestine is recognized by a large number of members, for example, it can get access to the International Criminal Court. It can launch, it can sue Israel in front of the ICC. That has certain legal implications. So in that sense, it has legal implications, but the recognition itself does not make, an entity like Palestine into a state because Palestine has no sovereignty on its territory or very limited in the West Bank, definitely not in Gaza. But ultimately, in order to have full UN membership, you need the UN Security Council resolution, and there you have the United States that has a veto power. So, without ultimately the United States on board, plus the other four or the other five permanent members of the Security Council, without these, these post-war, the winners essentially of the Second World War, without them on board, you don't have any Palestine. I mean, you have UN membership to some extent, you have observer status and so on, but not full statehood. So even if people don't like these policies, what are they going to do? Or, is any country going to renounce a trade deal with the United States because they're in favor of Israeli policies? I don't think so. I mean, neither Spain or Ireland, none of them. I mean, they might recognize Palestine, but they still have all of them still have their national interests. No state is just purely acting out of ideology and because they're for the good of humanity and whatever. They're all acting out of political interests. It is really like a conflict about that specific this piece of land. It's a conflict around Israeli security there, but it has no wider implications. There is no Suez Canal in Palestine that could where world trade could be in danger or anything like this. There is some symbolic shift, maybe a slight legal shift. But on the balance of power, on the larger scheme of things, It will not really change much. But maybe, in the long term it will. Maybe over the next 10, 20 years, maybe, in future historians will look back and say, yes, this started, that movement that ultimately led to Palestinian statehood. Mumkin, I don't know. We'll see.